The door flew open with such force that the family photos on the wall rattled. Mark froze, his 5-year-old daughter's half-braided hair still between his fingers as Victoria Chen stood in his doorway, her normally composed face flushed with emotion. "You're fired, Mark. Effective immediately." His daughter's small voice broke the silence. "Daddy, why is your work lady so angry?" If you're wondering how a dedicated single father went from being a rising star at Chen Innovations to standing unemployed in his living room on a Tuesday morning, stay with me. This story might just change how you see the people around you, both at work and at home. If this resonates with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories that remind us we're all fighting battles others know nothing about. 6 months earlier, Mark Reynolds had been thriving, or so he thought. At 34, he'd established himself as a talented software developer at Chen Innovations, a mid-sized tech company with ambitious growth plans. His boss, Victoria Chen, had personally recruited him 2 years ago, impressed by his portfolio and innovative thinking. Mark's wife, Ellie, had died when their daughter Sophie was just 2 years old. A sudden aneurysm, there one moment, gone the next. The grief had nearly destroyed him, but Sophie needed him. So each morning, he put one foot in front of the other, learned to braid hair, memorized the names of princess dolls, and somehow kept their little world spinning. Victoria had been understanding at first. When Sophie had the flu, she'd let Mark work remotely. When preschool closed unexpectedly, she'd nodded sympathetically as he rushed out early. But lately, something had changed. The warmth in her eyes had cooled, replaced by tight smiles and clipped responses. "Reynolds, my office," Victoria had said one Monday morning, her voice carrying across the open workspace. Mark followed her, coffee in hand, oblivious to the tension radiating from her shoulders. The Nakamura project deadline moved up. "We need the interface redesign by Friday." Mark nodded, mentally calculating childcare hours. "I can make that work." Victoria studied him, her dark eyes unreadable. "Are you sure? This is priority 1. "Absolutely. I've got this." She hesitated, then nodded. "Good. Because we can't afford another missed deadline." Mark had frowned, confused. "I haven't missed any deadlines." The Westfield report was 2 days late. That was because Sophie had strep throat. "I told Ryan." "Ryan isn't your supervisor, I am." Victoria's voice had softened slightly. "Mark, I need to know if there's a problem." "No problem at all," he'd assured her, already planning to work late every night that week. What Mark didn't see was Victoria watching him leave, concern etched across her face as she picked up her phone and made a call. The Nakamura interface redesign was brutal. Mark worked through lunches, stayed late after Sophie went to bed, and still barely finished by Friday's deadline. He submitted it at 4:58 p.m., 2 minutes before the cutoff, and collapsed back in his chair with exhaustion. His phone buzzed with a text from Mrs. Patel, Sophie's after-school sitter. "Sophie asking when you're coming. Says tummy hurts." Mark grabbed his laptop and jacket, rushing past Victoria's office without noticing her raised hand trying to get his attention. At home, Sophie's tummy ache mysteriously disappeared once he suggested making homemade pizza together. As they rolled out dough, his phone buzzed repeatedly with emails, but he ignored them. This was Sophie time. Monday morning, Victoria was waiting by his desk. "The Nakamura design has issues. Did you test it before submission?" Mark felt heat rise to his face. "Of course I did." "What issues?" "The navigation breaks on mobile. And there are accessibility problems with the color scheme." Her voice remained professional, but disappointment radiated from her. "I need you to fix it today." "I'll get right on it," Mark promised, shame burning in his chest. He had tested it, but rushed through, distracted by Sophie's text. Victoria lingered. "Mark, do you have a minute to talk?" "Not about Nakamura." His computer was already booting up. Can it wait until I fix this? I want to get it done ASAP. Something flickered across Victoria's face, frustration? Concern? But she nodded and walked away. Mark didn't notice how she stopped at the HR director's office on her way back. The pattern continued for weeks. Victoria would try to schedule one-on-one meetings, Mark would postpone them to focus on immediate deadlines. She'd leave post-it notes asking him to stop by her office, he'd intend to go but get caught up in coding problems. She sent emails with subject lines like, "Important, please respond," that got buried in his inbox. Meanwhile, Sophie was struggling at school. Her teacher reported she was becoming withdrawn, not participating in group activities. Children of single parents often feel insecure, the teacher explained gently during a parent-teacher conference. They need extra reassurance that they're a priority. So Mark doubled down on quality time with Sophie, which meant working frantically during her school hours and after her bedtime. His code quality suffered. Dark circles formed under his eyes. He started making careless mistakes. One Tuesday, he arrived at work to find a formal meeting request from Victoria and Diane from HR. The subject line read, "Performance discussion, mandatory." Mark's stomach dropped. He couldn't lose this job. Not with a mortgage and Sophie depending on him. He immediately messaged Victoria. "Can we reschedule? I have a deadline on the Watson project today." Victoria's response came quickly, "This meeting takes priority." 2 p.m. At 1:45, Mark's phone rang. Sophie's school. She had fallen on the playground and might need stitches. Could he come right away? Without hesitation, Mark grabbed his jacket and rushed out, sending a hasty message to Victoria, "Family emergency. Have to leave. We'll explain tomorrow." He didn't wait for a response. Sophie's injury looked worse than it was, a butterfly bandage did the trick. But by the time they left the pediatrician's office, it was after 5 p.m. Mark took her for ice cream to calm her nerves, then home for a quiet evening of reading and early bedtime. He opened his laptop at 9 p.m. to find multiple missed calls, messages, and a final email from Victoria. "Mark, we need to discuss your position at Chen Innovations immediately. Please call me tonight regardless of the hour, or I will have no choice but to take more direct action." Exhausted, Mark decided it could wait until morning. He closed his laptop and fell into a troubled sleep. The next morning, he overslept. The rushed breakfast routine with Sophie left no time to check emails. He was just finishing her hair when the knock came, followed by Victoria's unexpected entrance and those devastating words. "You're fired, Mark. Effective immediately." The silence that followed seemed eternal. Sophie looked between them, confused and frightened by the tension. "Sophie, sweetheart," Mark said gently, "can you go play in your room for a few minutes? Daddy needs to talk to Ms. Chen." Once Sophie was gone, Mark faced Victoria. "You can't just show up at my home and fire me. I wouldn't have had to if you'd answered any of my attempts to communicate over the past 3 months." Victoria's voice was tight with emotion. "Do you have any idea what's been happening? I've been busy. We're all busy, Mark. But when your boss tries to talk to you about serious concerns for 12 weeks straight, you make time." Mark sank onto the couch. "What concerns?" "My work has been deteriorating steadily. But that's not even the main issue." Victoria sat across from him, her professional demeanor cracking. "The company is restructuring. My division is being eliminated." Mark stared at her. "What?" "I've been trying to tell you for months. I wanted to offer you a position in the new AI development team. It would mean more flexible hours, partial remote work, and a salary increase." She ran a hand through her hair in frustration. "I've been fighting for you, Mark. I know you're talented. I know you're struggling as a single parent. I wanted to help. The realization hit Mark like a physical blow. All those meeting requests, notes, emails, they weren't reprimands. They were lifelines he'd been too overwhelmed to grab. But yesterday was the deadline for transfers, Victoria continued. When you missed our final meeting and didn't respond to any communications, HR finalized the termination paperwork. I came here hoping for one last chance to talk sense into you. Mark's voice was barely audible. I didn't know. Because you weren't listening. Victoria's tone softened. Mark, I admire how dedicated you are to your daughter. But you've been drowning, refusing all help, and your work has suffered severely. So that's it? I'm just fired? Victoria studied him for a long moment. Not necessarily. What followed was the most honest conversation Mark had had since Ellie died. Victoria listened as he finally admitted how overwhelmed he felt, how terrified he was of failing Sophie, how he'd convinced himself that working harder was the only solution. The company has a family support program, Victoria explained. Subsidized childcare, emergency backup care, even counseling services. I've mentioned it in at least 4 emails you apparently never read. Mark's face burned with shame. I thought I was handling everything. Clearly not. But Victoria's voice had lost its edge. Here's what I'm proposing, a 60-day probationary transfer to the AI team. Mandatory participation in the family support program. And weekly check-ins with me, no cancellations, no excuses. Hope flickered in Mark's chest. You'd do that? After everything? I'm not doing it for you, Victoria said bluntly. I'm doing it because you're talented when you're not running yourself into the ground, and because that little girl deserves a father who isn't constantly on the brink of collapse. From the hallway came a small voice, is Daddy still fired? They turned to see Sophie peeking around the corner, eyes wide with worry. Victoria's expression softened. No, Sophie. Your daddy isn't fired. But he does need to learn to ask for help sometimes. Sophie nodded solemnly. Daddy says I need to ask for help too. But sometimes he forgets his own rules. Mark felt tears prick his eyes as Victoria laughed, the first genuine laugh he'd heard from her in months. Smart girl, Victoria said. Maybe you can help remind him. The next 6 months weren't easy. Mark had to swallow his pride and accept help, from the company's family programs, from a grief counselor who helped him process feelings he'd been suppressing, and from Victoria, who proved to be a surprisingly compassionate mentor once communication lines were truly open. The flexible schedule of the AI team allowed him to be more present for Sophie while actually improving his work quality. For the first time since Ellie died, he felt like he was thriving rather than just surviving. One evening, as he and Sophie walked home from her now favorite after-school program, she looked up at him thoughtfully. Daddy, remember when Ms. Victoria came to our house and was so mad? Mark nodded, squeezing her hand. I do. I'm glad she yelled at you. Mark laughed in surprise. You are? Sophie nodded decisively. You smile more now. And you don't look tired all the time. And we have pancakes for breakfast instead of just cereal. Such simple measures of success, but they meant everything. Later that week, Victoria stopped by his desk as he was preparing to leave at a reasonable hour. The Anderson project looks good, she said. Really innovative approach. Thanks. Having actual brain space to think helps. Victoria smiled. Who would have thought? As Mark gathered his things, he hesitated. I never properly thanked you. For not giving up on me. Don't make it weird, Reynolds, Victoria said, but her eyes were warm. Just keep showing up, for your work, for Sophie, and for yourself. I'm trying, he promised. I know. She glanced at her watch. Now go. Sophie's waiting. Sometimes the most important messages come in the form of a door flying open and words we don't want to hear. For Mark, "You're fired" became the wake-up call that saved not just his career, but his chance at a balanced, fulfilling life with his daughter. We all miss hints sometimes. We all get so caught up in our struggles that we fail to see the help being offered. The true measure of strength isn't in handling everything alone, it's in having the courage to reach out and accept support when we need it most. If this story touched you, please like and subscribe for more content that explores the complicated, beautiful mess of being human. Remember, none of us have to face our battles alone. Sometimes help is just a conversation away.